Peace and blessings, everyone. Welcome back. Queen Osset here. In this video chat, or this recording, I want to begin the shadow work process. Let's just go ahead and put that out on the table. I know in my last video, I had mentioned that maybe it's time to do a little shadow work. Now, to be honest with you, Mr. Jung is not exactly a favorite of mine. Mr. Jung, unfortunately, looked down upon those of us of African descent and indigenous cultures, because we were considered backwards and primitive. Okay, no matter. I've worked through that, and I have been able to cull through all of that stuff to get to the things that I need, the meat, the information to help me become a better me. And in doing so, I've been able to share some things that I have learned along the way. Now, to be honest with you, it doesn't seem like shadow work seems to be a thing that is something that those of us in my culture tend to be interested in. That is not something that we discuss or talk about in the West Indian culture. I'm sure it's not something that's discussed and talked about in the African American culture as well. Things like child abuse, depression, mental illness, these are not things that are discussed openly. And this is sort of the way that I grew up. There were just things that we just never talked about. Anyway, looking back, my first journey into shadow work was, without even realizing it, was many, many years ago when I joined the military. And how I ended up being in the Army was not of the most pleasant circumstances, but I had a drill instructor that seemed to have made me his priority. He made it his project to break me. At that time, that's what I was feeling. That's what I thought. I'll never forget this man to this day, Sergeant Johnson, because of this man and his belief in me when I didn't believe in me. I am, that's one of the strongest bricks in my foundation of my growth, thanks to this man. He was the tower personified in my life before I knew anything about Tarot. He became a force during my time, my first 3-4 months in the military. He worked at breaking through this shell, the perception of myself, the sense of self, the belief that other people had piled on top of me, the idea that I should have been this and I should do this, he tore through all of that. He made me work through all of that. And one of the biggest things that he had done for me, he refused to pronounce my name correctly. Refused. And I learned, not quickly enough, that whenever I was going to correct him, it was going to cost me. So it was like I had to think how important it was to me to have this man pronounce my name correctly. Was it worth an additional 50 push-ups? Was it worth an additional KP duty? Was it worth, scrubbing the porta potty, what was it worth? Because that's, we are identified by our name. But I had to really understand what my name was, what I needed to be called, why I held on to that. And when I graduated, my family was there for graduation, and I just knew this man was going to bungle my name. And he didn't. He actually called me by my name quite proudly. He made me understand what being called, the essence of that name. It's hard for me to explain, but let's just say doing some genealogical work and ancestry work and all of that brought a lot of this understanding to the surface. So, come around to shadow work. And I didn't realize that was maybe the beginning of my shadow work. I guess about 20 years ago, I was part of this psychic development circle. And I had two women that I work with. And one was a hereditary strega. And there were some things that she told me about myself. I mean, she had no qualms about telling me about myself. And then, of course, I discovered the Shadow Work book by Christina Jetty. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can grab this book. I'm back. This is the book. And I worked through this book for quite some time to understand what this whole shadow is. So, from what I gather, I'm not an expert. There are a lot of people on YouTube who will tell you about doing shadow work is integrating those parts of yourself that have been suppressed. Personally, I have an issue with the word integrate, because that means that those parts of myself are separate from who I am, and I need to find them and somehow make them fit. So for me, shadow work is bringing those parts of yourself that you have kept pushed down, bringing them to the light, giving them honor, giving them the love that they need. They're part of who you are. So, for example, for me, ironically enough, I was a tomboy. I've always had long nails. But I'd rather do things with my dad, which is lawn care and taking care of the car and all of that, than do the domesticated stuff that my mom wanted me to do, which is, be the homemaker and cook and all of that. And my mother used to tell me that I could not boil water and I was not going to be a good cook and all of that stuff. So you grow up with all of that, you listen to that. But, my dad, he pretty much supported me in doing whatever I wanted to do in that sense, because I had that curiosity about cars and being independent. I was different than my mother in that regard. But it was a weird dichotomy because I love, girly things. I still love girly things, but I love the sense of knowing how things work and that mathematical scientific mind and all of that. But I do remember years down the line, a long time ago, I was married, and I remember telling my mother that I was going to dissolve the relationship, and my mother's solution was for me to have a child and stop running around so much and, become that whole wife-mother thing. And for a minute there, I thought, maybe if I learn how to cook and etc. Anyway, so you get the gist of it, right? So those parts that you suppress, you push that down, okay? I have a lot of stories. I was told that I was selfish and inconsiderate. And, you try to be more giving. You try to overcompensate. You put yourself on the back burner. And this is something that I still work with now because, I don't want people to be uncomfortable, even in my 40s when I was belly dancing. I was part of a troupe, and my dance teacher told me once that, you can't always be in the spotlight and allow someone else to do what, you know, take center stage. But, I worked hard. I rehearsed. I knew the routines. I want to be my best self. There was this thing, I had a dance mate, and we had rehearsal. We always had a class a couple times a week, and we would spend the first 30 minutes listening to this woman talk about how crappy her life was, and I would be irritated. I spent my money to pay for my class, and no one could understand how come I was not compassionate and warm and comforting to this person. Excuse me, I had a rough day too. This is the only outlet that I ever had. So all of that's part of your shadow that you suppress because you don't want people to be uncomfortable and you don't want to say the wrong thing, etc., etc., etc. So before we start going into shadow work, I'm going to tell you where you are right now, especially if you're over 30. You've done a freaking good job up until this point. If you've never done shadow work and you are watching me and for the most part you are over 30 years old, somehow the other you have managed to keep your shit together. If you had children, you've managed to raise them. If you have a job, you've managed to keep it and perform it. If you drive, you've managed to drive from point A to point B. Kudos. Give yourself a pat on the back, okay? I know that there's this whole premise of doing shadow work, can make you feel like you've got all this crap going on and you got to deal with it and et cetera, et cetera. Here's the thing. Doing shadow work is a choice. But I want you to understand, you must do this from a place of love because doing shadow work will get messy. And you need to allow it to be messy. Purge that shit. Let it come up, look at it, and then sweep it away. Okay? Now, when you want to do shadow work, why? How do you know you're going to be doing shadow work or you should be doing shadow work? You keep digging up past trauma, all right? So shadow work helps you to uncover this and really look at it. Now, I know that some people have some very traumatic past. I was not subjected to child abuse in that sense. I was never sexually molested. All of the horrific things that people endure. Okay, my heart goes out to you. But maybe now will be the time for you to look at it and say, I am not that. Something craptacular, something crappy, obnoxious, heinous happened to me, but you are not that, and you need to redefine that, okay? Number two, you can't stop questioning yourself, without breaking everything down, meaning maybe he said that, maybe she meant that, like, did I do the right thing? If I had done this, if I left a little sooner, if I left a little later, maybe if I had called them, maybe if I wore something different, that whole thing, it's just a simple thing. I received a call from someone who, and I hope she's watching, and I asked her just a simple question, and she took it to a totally different level. That was not me. I'm the type of person, when I ask a question, I don't need all of that. I'm asking a question just simply to get facts. Just give it to me. Straight, no chaser. Okay. Number three, you can't get enough of your dark side. Okay. Meaning, many people feel very good about being internal and, they hold on to malaise and anxiety and depression and don't want to do anything about it. They don't want to come out. They don't want to emerge. They're not, it's safe. How I understand about alcoholism and drug abuse. And there's a book that, what's her name? Miss, MYSS, put out. And in it, she talks about a person who was a recovering alcoholic, and I guess maybe you're always in recovery, which I think on one hand is problematic, because then how do you grow? I mean, like, if you know that taking a drink will set you back, then that is a system that you put into place so that that never has to be a concern. And so you're able to move forward and enjoy your life. But as I said, I'm not an expert, okay? But I do know that from my own family, things that happened 30, 40, 50, even 60 years ago, I still hear about as though they happened yesterday. And that is the reason why this behavior is happening, because of something that happened 50 years ago. That means that 50 years has gone by and you haven't grown, you haven't moved forward, you haven't matured. And again, that's a choice that's been made. Okay? So what happens is that you keep celebrating your breakdowns and your fed ups, you stay in that place. All right? You get in touch with the side of you that loves to be miserable and powerless, or powerful, or whatever society tells you not to be, right? This goes back to, let's say, the star football player, when he was in high school, and now he's 57 years old, and he still thinks he's a star football player, because that's when he felt the most honored and he felt the most valuable. Not knowing that his life had become a series of wins and everything. He just kept staying in that place. There's a tendency to project, okay? You project something, and I mentioned this in one of my videos. I don't like people who whine. That whining gets under my skin. And the reason why, and I work through this, and I'm still working through this. As a matter of fact, I own it, okay? I'm not going to do anything about that part of my shadow. I don't like people who whine, because I've seen people whine and get things just from whining. And I'll be busting my hump, and I get nothing. And, I remember one time in my life, I have tried that whining, and I got the look like, oh my goodness, she's having a seizure. So that's my thing. And it's a blanket statement, but I own it. And it's okay, because that's going to be part of what you do. You own it, and then you keep moving. What does it do? It's not doing anything. It's not stopping my world. It's not stopping me from being productive. Okay. But here's what happens when you do your shadow work. You get to this place where you feel really good because you take responsibility for your own BS. Seriously, that's very empowering. Okay? So, if you've gotten this far, if you've done shadow work before, you haven't done shadow work, I want you to keep this in mind, okay? You're less of a crackpot than you used to be. You're not as crazy as you used to be. You're actually pretty mellow right now. I want you to think about your life, right? Maybe when we were younger and the hormones were kicking in, I know me, I was a tornado. It didn't take much to set me off. It really didn't. In any sort of infraction, because I was walking around with so much hurt and pain. This is through my 20s into my 30s. I would lash out. When I say I was like a tornado, I want you to think about, can you tame, capture, direct a tornado? That's where I was. Okay? But I still have a ton of work to do. But now I'm working less from a place of fear. So I'm not as crazy as I used to be. I still have a lot of work to do, but I'm not as fearful about doing this work. Okay, this is what's going to happen with you when you start doing your shadow work, right? When you do your shadow work, you start to feel that you are in alignment with things, your subconscious and your conscious, or the unconscious, whatever. Everything starts vibrating at the same level. And for the most part, you feel happy. Like, you feel happy just because it's Saturday, it's Sunday, it's, I don't know, I'm wearing a teal blouse today. You just feel happy. There's more of the good stuff in your life than there is of the crappy stuff, okay? And when there's the crappy stuff, you recognize it for what it is, and you can deal with it in that moment, you don't fall into the rabbit hole. You don't fall into that tunnel where you stay in there. All right? It just means that you've done a lot of mental and spiritual work. And I know I have. I've done a lot of work. When you do your shadow work, I want you to keep this in mind, that when it all seems to go to crap, gently remind yourself about how far you have come, okay? Give yourself a love hug. You're not crazy. You're just temporarily off course, okay? And when you start to clean up these things, these spaces, start to fill in the holes, give light to those places that you had suppressed, start to bring that energy upward and look at it like, yeah, I'm a badass. I can do this, I can do that. Yes, I'm assertive, I'm aggressive, I go after what I want. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm outspoken, I have a beautiful voice. I no longer have a quote unquote hourglass figure, but you do. It's just that your hour's in different places. That's all. You still have that figure. You don't have to beat yourself up. There's no body shaming. There's no, do I have hair? Do I not have hair? Long nails, short nails, all of this stuff, okay? It becomes part of who you are. Again, in my mind, it becomes less integrated, because that word means, what is that card that I had pulled the other day when I talked about releasing something? Oh yes, what we needed to let go for this moon cycle. Remember seeing that? Adaptation, which means you go along with the flow and you fit in and you don't shake things up. But that's not the meaning of the 5 for me. I've never been one where I want to fit in, so to speak. I am who I am. I am what I am. What is this whole thing about me needing to integrate? What? Assimilate? What are we? The Borg? Anyway, when you start to work within yourself, you start to get what you want. You start to move in alignment with that. People who don't want to be around you, people who are not supporting you, people who are not getting you, you don't have to worry about them, because your vibration will raise up and they'll realize there is nothing that I can do to tear this person down. There's nothing I could do to make this person feel bad. So I'm going to move on to the next person. Let's see. Our dark side, our shadow self, is not concerned with other people's expectations, You have to keep in mind that sometimes our pretend self wants to be loved by everybody. So stop pretending, I'm not sure I want to be loved by everybody. I want you to be truthful. I want to be truthful with everybody. And I think that comes from a place of loving myself, right? Now, I'll talk a little bit more. Let me just continue on. So I have a bunch of notes here. To actually love your shadow side, what people don't know about you, you have to put out into the world. Okay, so I always say I'm an open book. There's not much that people don't know about me. Take that with a grain of salt or not. Be willing to be open. You're being asked to be vulnerable. I get it. May not be for you. Take your time, okay? Keep in mind that you don't have to be this positive person all the time. You didn't come here to be positive and to be a saint all the time. You came here to be real. You incarnated in this life to be real, to be authentic, okay? It's great to be positive, but it's more important to be real and true to your emotions at that specific point in time. So if you are feeling angry, see, this is where you learn that. Then it's okay to express that in the right way so that it's productive. If you're feeling sad, rather than put on the happy face and, oh, everything is great and that doesn't bother me, you're not being truthful. Several months ago, a customer came into the store and she asked me how I was doing. And I said, I'm doing okay. Just okay? She asked me. I said, yeah, I'm doing just okay. Well, that doesn't seem like your usual self. I said, excuse me? It's part of who I am. This may actually be my usual self. Just because I'm not smiling today and super happy doesn't mean that I'm not myself. This is just another aspect of myself. So that's what I mean. She had not been used to seeing me in that place. And many of us, we tend to have a particular persona that we want other people to see. And then when we show them something else, they get put off. But you have to be brave enough to say, this is also part of who I am. Today, I'm a little cranky, so I just need some time to myself. Today, because I'm in a crappy mood, I'm going to work in the back room and have it be okay, right? Okay. Allow yourself to be moody, grumpy, and negative sometimes. It's all you. You understand me? It's fine. We live in a society with this overload of love and light and turn the other cheek, and it's all positive and positive vibration. Look, the universe has energy, neither negative nor positive. A battery in your car has both a negative and a positive, right? And they both have to work simultaneously for your vehicle to go, right? So you have to have the negative and the positive in order to have mobility, in order to have growth in your life. Okay? In our darkest moments comes illumination, right? If you did not go through those dark times, you would not become so wise. Whoever is listening to this, your dark times may be different than mine. More than likely probably will be individually, from the loss of a job to the loss of a loved one. It's all relative. It's not the same. How you feel, though, is what matters, and that's what should be honored. So, to embrace your shadow self, learn to love your flaws. Everything that you may despise about yourself, it's time to accept, because those things make up parts of who you are. So anything you don't like about yourself, I don't care if it's a physical thing, an emotional thing, you have to learn to love it. You have to learn to look at it first, okay? And see it for what it is. And say, you know what, maybe it served a purpose when you were in a different time and space. And now it's time to let it go, Like I said, when I was younger, anything would set me off. Tornado mode. It didn't matter. Okay. But I'm going to tell you, the result of that is that I always had to clean up the damn mess. And after a while, you just get tired of that. Okay. People really start to look at you like you lost your damn mind. Right? All of those so-called undesirable qualities of yourself, learn to love them unconditionally. Keep in mind that you are good enough today. You don't have to do anything. You are good enough right now where you are today. Okay? Learn how to expose yourself so nobody can expose you. When you're ready to do that, take ownership of your stuff, right? My coworkers, I'm a hard ass. I admit it. I am. And I am okay with it, As I said, you're not here to be a saint. You're not here to be this perfect person. You came here to be authentic. Okay? So, I want you to keep in mind that the perception of yourself is greater and more important than the perception anyone could have of you. Your perception is what creates your reality. Does that make sense? The perception that you have of yourself is more important than a perception that someone else may have of you. Okay? Secondly, to embrace your shadow side, stop using filters. Stop editing your life. Realize that you are good enough today. Okay? So I'm going to wrap this up by showing you a few decks that you can use. I'm going to maybe I should come back with a couple, can't speak. Yeah, maybe I'll do that because we're going on 30 minutes here. I will come in with a list of decks that we can start working with, and some questions, and a spread that I found, one spread. Tarot by Anya, she has a beautiful spread that she created. But I want to show you something that I found. Can you see this? It says, never be ashamed of a scar. It simply means you are stronger than whatever tried to hurt you. Okay? Can you see that? I hope so. Never be ashamed. Okay? So, hopefully you leave some comments and let me know if we're going to go ahead and move forward. As I said, the next video, I am going to have a couple of spreads, a couple of questions to get going, and a couple of decks to help you work with your shadow, bringing it to light. Keep in mind, you don't have to work with a dark deck. Start looking around at your collection. Start doing some research on the internet to think about a deck you may have in your collection. Work with a deck that is loving, kind, generous, open. Let me see. I'm going to put you guys on pause and see if I can find a list that I have. Okay, I'm back. So, quick list. Tarot of the Vampires, Wildwood, the Chicoli, both the Tarot and the Oracle, the Steampunk Tarot, of course the Mary L, which is a favorite for a lot of people, Sun and Moon, Deviant Moon, Bohemian Gothic, I don't have that one, Sospirito, Next World, the Numinous, Hidden Realms Tarot, Foxfire Oracle, Le Vampire Oracle, Shapeshifter, Shadow and Light Oracle deck. Those are all Lucy Cavendish. Sacred Rebels, the Wild Kuan Yin Oracle. Let me see. As I said, I'll come back in with a list of decks, maybe show you some that I have in my collection, and then we can go ahead and get prepared to, I don't know how you want to do this. I have a listing of some questions. I have some spreads that we can try. And then we'll see how this goes. So in the meantime, if you have any questions, just leave them down below. And I will talk to you guys later. Stay blessed. Talk to you. Bye-bye.